you should tell us about your work as well.
Yeah.
All right. All right. We are here on Left of the Projector talking about Rollerball. There are actually two Rollerballs, the original 1975 movie starring James Caan, and then there was a lesser known Rollerball, at least to me, from 2002, featuring LL Cool J and a number of other Chris Klein plays Jonathan Cross. And here to talk about it, I have Matt Boers and Ben Clarkson. Why don't you tell us about your work?
Hey, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Pleasure to talk ball.
We are the co-creators of Justice Warriors, a dystopian science fiction comic that is, inspired, has a lot of influence from this 1970s dystopian milieu that we're going to be discussing.
And mixing it with like 80s and 90s buddy cop action flicks.
Yeah.
To great effect.
Yeah, this is such a I feel like this coming together was random. I think Ben, you saw I tweeted about I think I was watching The Running Man. I was talking about just the dystopian kind of movies from the 80s and even 70s that are basically just like now. Like they're no longer really at all fiction. You can pick one of these movies, Running Man, Rollerball. We'll get into this movie or these movies, but I feel like we've peaked past anything being truly dystopian.
Yeah, you were saying that there's sort of warnings against like, better not vote for a socialist, better not support a socialist, or you'll get a dystopia. And whoopsie, you got one anyways.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that
was sort of the joke of Justice Warriors is then we have those dystopias, but we make all of the politics and all of the symbols and all the things happening in the world very much referential to the present every day, but we turn it up to like 15.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I mean, so I'll be in full honesty, I haven't read the first issue. I remember you tweeted that saying that it was hard to get, and I actually bought it at a used comic book store.
Okay. Yeah, it's
I bought it used at a comic book store is what I meant to say.
It's now actually, you can't buy the trade paperback right now. It is sold so well that we are victims of our own success, and it's very hard to actually even hawk the book to beautiful internet audiences.
The supply chain strikes again. Yeah, it's you can
get that boat out of the canal.
You can back order it. You can back order it on bookshop.org and the Nib, which is a website I run, a comics publication. We have some in the store, and it'll be back on Amazon and the other sites hopefully soon.
Yeah.
But it's new. It came out earlier this year. It's not. There was just a lag in the second printing getting stocked.
I don't think they expected it to be as smash hit, ultra popular, the greatest book ever written, must read.
The crowds in Rollerball. That's the readership of the comic. Just thirsting for more.
No. I made some funny notes of the crowd, especially in the original Rollerball. But yeah, so we can jump into the movie. So for anyone who hasn't seen Rollerball, it came out in 1975. It was sort of this dystopian. Again, we'll talk about the idea of whether it's dystopian. Basically, they've now, it's in the future. There is kind of a corporation wars essentially have occurred, where now every city is run by a corporation, Energy or different ones, and the home team, the Rollerball team that's kind of focused on is in Houston, and their corporation that runs everything is Energy, and that basically brings you right into. They don't waste any time by getting right into the fact that the national anthem for the game is like "To the Corporation." They
Yeah,
don't
it's the
play
corporate
voices.
anthem, and everyone's
Yeah.
like
But
near tears.
I believe they might even have called it the corporate hymn, and there aren't
Yeah,
there aren't lyrics. It's just like you just sort of
and James Caan, who plays our protagonist, Jonathan E, which I think is the best name for a protagonist of all time, is like tapping his spiked fist against his thigh, and just like shaking his head to the rhythm. He's so into the.
he's getting mean.
He's getting mean. He's getting emotional. He believes in the energy corporation.
Yeah, it's like a perfect like opening shot of him versus, when we'll get to the ending shot of him. I feel like it's this truly full circle for his belief in like the actual system. He believes in the corporation because, as we'll find out, is he's wealthy. Like he's afforded luxury that most people in the city or in any city really are afforded, and he has, we'll see that in a bit. He's got horses and a plane and whatever. He's got
Got
nice
a new girlfriend for every day of the week.
Yeah,
basically.
he sends one away, a new one shows up the next day. What is up?
And he's not surprised by it at all. He just like walks in and there she is.
Well,
but the I think
corporation provides. The corporation provides.
Yes, they do. And one of the note I was writing down at the beginning, I think this might even be before. I guess you kind of get the sense that he's very popular. Obviously, Jonathan E is, like an icon. He's like, like LeBron James or whatever you want to call of the thing. And I'm thinking to myself
he's got the highest death toll, one game death toll in the league. I believe,
like
in league history.
Yeah.
Highest speed rollerball vaulting, most incapacitations per match.
Yes.
I'm a stats head.
Yeah. Well, I thought that the joke about the stat heads, I feel like that's like the wealthy can afford to be like a like a stat person, whereas the commoners watching the game, they're just, foaming at the mouth.
That might be the case when that is made, but now it's like everyone's a stat head. You got
That's
your
true.
phones,
That's true.
and you just sort of look things up and start memorizing them.
Half the fun of sports now is like having a fantasy team and like knowing all the stats and like doing the over under on someone's offsides.
Yeah. You definitely would want to draft Jonathan E on your fantasy rollerball team.
Man,
I think that's guaranteed victory. And it's not even clear they have more than like 6 or 8 teams because they don't really say, but they're clearly not that many industries. So there's Tokyo and there's a few other places.
Which, by the way, some of the world building in movie I like a lot, but some of it doesn't quite hold together if you think about how the sport works. Like there only being something like 6 national teams in the U.S. For this to be a sport that captures everyone's attention and serves the purpose that the movie says it does, you couldn't run games between 6 teams all the time where everybody's getting injured and dying, right?
Yes,
yeah. You have to have like a multiple backup teams, just like 18 people are dying in a game.
But they do show that there is a replacement system. Like the first practice they show with Jonathan E, I think the only practice, James Caan has given them a speech of like, okay, newcomers, this is how you take down a motorcycle on foot.
I really liked that because you get the feeling that it's like a boot camp. It's like, you're going into a war in which you could lose your life, and you're gonna get trained up quick, and then we're gonna give you a pair of skates, and no one's lasting as long as Jonathan E. You're lucky if you break a leg and then you get a ticket home.
Yeah, I love the concept of the game. Like we've eliminated all war, we've eliminated all conflict, and all that remains to sort of pave over all of the conflicts in our society is men on roller skates going around in a circle, and eventually a guy shoots a bowling ball out of a gun, and you gotta catch it with a catcher's mitt and then beat the shit out of each other while avoiding motorcycles. Yeah. And for that to be like filmed and yet be like, honestly, in my opinion, the worst part of the movie is the rollerball sequences. I can't stand the actual rollerball in the movie. Everything else of like Jonathan E's on Wii and his like I described this movie to my wife as Twilight of the Chads. It's just like dumb. James Caan's performance in it, playing this like mega jock who's like for the first time questioning society. He's very passive. He's like he doesn't even speak up against the corporate overlord really at the beginning, and like him trying to find out what a book is actually part of the plot of the movie. But he plays it so humanistically and so believably that those are the captivating parts of the film.
Yeah, I thought Khan was great. I thought he was great in it, and I do agree that the rollerball sequences feel really dated at this point.
I think they're really hard to shoot.
Yeah, not
really hard to shoot rollerball.
Not great like action shooting. But I hadn't seen this movie since I was a kid, and I was surprised and relieved a little bit to see it, like how much of the movie is actually not about rollerball, like the game. You know, it's about the society and this guy's journey to, you know, sort of encounter what corporate America really means, as opposed to the remake, which really does focus on the game of rollerball a lot.
Yeah, the original, the 75 version, especially for me, like the middle game, I guess it's against
Japan.
Tokyo.
Japan
or Tokyo. That whole part, I watched it a couple times, and that part the second time I just kind of like skipped it because it's kind of just unnecessary. It just doesn't feel
well. Moon Pie dies, but yes,
which provides. Pie.
Yeah, and I like how when they're preparing, they're like, these guys know karate. It was very. It's like they've got different. They brought in a Japanese like trainer to be like, okay, you gotta like understand these guys are on a different level.
And they're just like calling them little and being like, we can just kill them, basically. That's all they're saying.
Yeah, they begin a chant, which I thought was kind of interesting, and because it was like, we're not going to learn tactics, we are going to just, you know, believe in ourselves and kill, which is what I guess the corporation wanted. They wanted to make it bloodier and crazier.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I like about the film too, is that there's this mystery. Like, the Energy Corporation wants Jonathan to resign. And the whole thing that's pushing Jonathan is he's doing an investigation. It's like a jock doing an investigation. It's a jock detective movie. And he's trying to figure out, like, okay, what's history? Why am I here? Why are they asking to get rid of me? And he can't find the answer. He's too dumb to find the answer. But it's sort of like this existential quest where at the end of the day, they like strip everything away from him and they break him down. And he's like, well, I can still win at rollerball. You can't beat me at rollerball. And then he literally murders everyone on the rink in rollerball and wins the day.
What's so crazy too is I hadn't seen it in a long time. And the first time I'm watching, I'm thinking, are they going to take something away from him, like in his very luxurious personal life? He's got a beautiful home. He has an ex-wife, or I guess, did they say? They don't say ex-wife, but his old.
They do say ex-wife. An executive wanted her.
You know, thinks that she had been sent away and all this stuff. I'm surprised that wasn't another way to prod him to take, to retire. Instead, they just make the rules of the game more bloody so that maybe he dies accidentally.
Or to scare him out too, because there's the subtext that the second rule change, because there's a first rule change where it's no penalties and no substitutions, and then it's second rule change where it's to the death, and that's when his wife comes to him, his estranged wife, which is foreshadowed at the beginning of the film.
Yep.
And that's when they really rob Jonathan. Like, it's not a perfect movie. Like, a lot of this is played in subtext, but that's where they really rob Jonathan of everything, because he still believed that he would be happy with his wife. He makes several allusions that the corporation took his wife away from him. But at the end of the day, she's just getting paid by the corporation to go try to talk him into retiring too.
And sleep with them again.
Yeah, and then he just, like, he has this video of her, which he keeps as a memento, and he deletes it at the end. and it's like, oh, I don't
Nothing-
believe in anything. There's
Nothing
nothing
left but rollerball.
there's nothing left but rollerball, which is great. It's like this beautiful like existential drama of like, oh, you've taken everything from me. I thought it would be a really great companion piece to the 70s remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers,
Oh,
of like this slow stripping away of everything about life, this corporate takeover, because that's I guess the subtext of the 70s Body Snatchers.
yeah.
And eventually you only have yourself at the end. Like there's nothing, as everyone goes along with sort of the corporate order, you're left as like a solitary individual. And what can you do as a solitary individual? Murder someone during a rollerball match. That's what you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, the 70s, the 78 or whenever that Body Snatch is a great movie.
Yeah,
I actually have that
great
one coming up in a few months. Maybe.
I gotta check that out.
It's good, and the first one I think is also, you know, the original classic from the 50s is also a nice one. But the one thing that I also was going to mention is, so they definitely create, where I think you mentioned, Ben, like you get a glimpse of some of the like the society within
Mhm.
it, like, which I think is probably the most interesting scenes, like the party scene where he goes
I
to
love the party.
is a party scene. But I think even before that, I wanted
People
to mention
high on pills with a gun.
yes. But the way I was kind of looking at it, or the way the society seems to exist, is there's basically like the working class people who are betting and going to rollerball, and then you have basically all the other rollerball people are feel like they're not much higher up. They're, other than Jonathan E, none of them are really stars making money. You know,
No,
he takes
like
his
even
own-
Moon Pie says, like, when I get my privilege card, I'm gonna get myself a prostitute.
Yeah, it's like
Good
right,
one, Moon
exactly.
Pie.
So they basically and they've given Jonathan E so much, they figure when they tell him what to do, he'll just listen. He'll be a good little
Mhm.
boy and listen to the state, or I guess not the state, I guess it's the corporation. But I think it's just also, like, again, to go back to like the idea of, are these movies dystopian? I mean, basically corporations are running, you know, the NFL or whatever you want to
Mhm.
call as like in comparison. Is it any different?
And the American state. So
Yeah, and that too.
they certainly don't like their athletes being political.
Right.
yeah.
You gotta shut up and dribble.
And that's sort of the subtext of the end of the film too, because when he defies the corporation and he's going around in the circle for his final skate, covered in blood after murdering two men with his bare hands, the crowd starts cheering his name, and that's when you, the viewer, understand why they want to get rid of Jonathan. Is that he's actually become such an iconic figure at this point that he destabilizes the political order.
He's become bigger than the brand.
Yeah.
That was exactly what I was going to say. He's become bigger than the sport and everything. They can't have someone be too important because it takes away from like the illusion that it's like fragile.
As the CEO guy helpfully states outright, he just says
Yeah,
the purpose of this sport is to show that no individual can achieve anything on their own.
And they also point out when there's an early scene where the CEO comes to the locker room and they're doing repartee, and he says that like, we're running out of things to pay Jonathan with, and even says directly a line to the effect of you're on this treadmill for rewards. And the logic being Jonathan doesn't have any more reason to be controlled. Like there's nothing else to control him with. There's no other rewards to offer him. And that's where that scene with the wife, this is where it's a really interesting film, because usually a sports film, you have I guess in film theory, they call it the creation of the couple. Like you have some mediator, like believitude in yourself. And that lets you form a relationship with a female or a male, like it creates a couple at the end of the movie. And in this one, he really like, I've done spiels about Oedipal and anti-Oedipal films with Matt before. This is an anti-Oedipal film in the sense that he sort of like abandons everything. He doesn't want to reproduce the world. He abandons the entire idea of reconciling with his wife, which is sort of unheard of in movies. I don't know of any movie like this movie. It really is unique, and it shows that he has nothing left to lose, which is where that like last scene, it almost has like a revolutionary potential of like, oh, they can't do anything to him. Jonathan is the only free person. Now, if only he knew anything.
If he had a book.
If he had a book.
I think he exercises freedom in the only way he can, which is, he has very tight guardrails around him.
Yes.
I was kind of wondering which direction it was going to go, where it was like, is he going to, inspire some kind of revolt? And he can't, and they don't. And they're just cheering his name. It made me feel like, well, what happens after the movie? I mean,
that's literally what I wrote down. I was like, there's no end. There's no like, you don't get like any kind of satisfaction, which in some sense I do like.
That's better.
Well, I do think, if he had just, inspired an anti-corporate revolt and they overthrew the energy company, it would have felt a little cheap, I think, because he was not a very political guy. And I guess that's what it was about. Is it wasn't about the collective and or the organizing, and the team wasn't going to unionize or anything like that. It was a story about the individual rebelling against corporate control. And I even think that from what I understand, that's the directors, they appealed to the director, who viewed it as an allegory for trying to make artistic films in Hollywood.
Yeah, I saw something about that as well. Well, that's the thing too. I think, I guess it's like a similar trope to like a non-dystopian movie, where it's more of you're usually in like a sports movie, unless it's like a tennis player or a golf player, I guess it's like the team is achieving great success, but literally like all of his teammates are dead.
But he does. The reason he says at the beginning, because there's this scene where he's sitting in a relaxing room, having a silent room with the skeezy energy CEO, the very British energy CEO, and he said he's like very he's very soft at that part of the movie. I think he gets harsher as he goes through the film and has more interpersonal personal confidence. And he says like, oh, the team, like you can't just leave a part of a team. A team has a rhythm. Like he doesn't want to leave his team. It isn't entirely selfish.
That's
like
true.
He does have people he identifies as he's taking care of. But then at the end of the film, once again, they've stripped everything from this person. And all he has is his like violent potency. All he has is his potential to affect people. They've robbed him by trying to control him. They've robbed him of any desire that could keep him in place.
In preparation for this, I went and read the original short story, which is written by William Harrison, who also wrote the screenplay for this.
You read a book?
No. It's based off of like a 7-page short story that was in like Esquire magazine. And by the way, if you look online, if you Google it, the original, there's like a 2-page illustration that set this up, and I think Esquire, and it's super cool. And it's a very awesome illustration. But I wanted to read a short passage because it's just a short story, so it kind of flies through the plot, but there's some great writing, and since it's by the same guy, I think it gives you some insight into it. First of all, it's called Rollerball Murder. That is the name of the story, and the sport itself is called that. And the first sentence of the short story is, the game, here we go again. All glory to it. All things I am and I own because of rollerball murder. But
I love it.
The passage I wanted to share was he's talking to the CEO guy who's trying to get him to resign or quit, and he's having a similar sort of like self-actualization, like in the movie. He doesn't know what he wants, and the CEO guy says to him, "Knowledge either converts to power or converts to melancholy," which which could you possibly want, Jonathan? You have power, you have status and skill, and the whole masculine dream many of us would like to have. And then rollerball murder. There's no room for melancholy, is there? In the game, the mind exists for the body to make harmony of havoc. Do you want to change that? Do you want your mind to exist for itself alone? I don't think you want that, do you?
That's great.
I like
I
that.
mean, I feel like they captured that perfectly.
Yeah.
In the movie, I feel like it's. Yeah, well, that's.
Twilight
I knew
of
there
the
was a story,
Chad.
but I did not read it, so I appreciate that you did. And I was trying to pull up the image of it, but I couldn't find it.
I got it. It's like a ball. He's like seeing a guy. He's throwing the ball, and there's a person just bailing.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
It's
can.
pretty-
You can.
It's similar
buy
to
it.
it's similar to some of the art, that they've made for the movie posters, but it's pretty cool in my opinion. And I'm also just a big fan of the day in which you could just have a 2-page spread illustration for a short story in a magazine.
Yeah, that probably
Yeah.
cost thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
Oh,
some illustrator got to do a 2-page double page spread illustration in Esquire in the 60s or something. Yeah, I probably got paid $10,000 in at the time.
Yeah, that's.
I thought I saw something that said that William Harrison, even though he wrote the screenplay, wasn't in the credits, but I didn't go back to see if that was actually the case. I don't know why that would have be the reason, if like there was a dispute or something, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But one other thing, you were talking about the like the what was it they called it, the like the luxury center, where they're going through. I feel like they make it look like it's sort of like that's like very futuristic looking. I don't know, but then everything else is very just sort of like the houses they go to are like these very like modern-y kind of. Everything is just couches everywhere because it seems like they're all just doing aphrodisiac drugs and like having orgies, which is kind of probably what they wanted to show but couldn't.
Yeah, everything looks like it's from the 70s in this movie. It looks great. We should also probably talk about that when he goes to see the computer.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh,
I had totally forgot about this. I was surprised that the Chat GPT runs the entire history of the world.
Liquid Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Liquid Chat GPT. Liquid cooled GPUs. And then the computer crashes randomly and loses like the 100 Years War. It's just you can't know about that anymore.
Well, like they make an allusion to it before, where I think they say like when they go to originally to like the library or the luxury center, and they're asking the woman who's there, and just like, oh, it just accidentally got erased, and they're basically saying, the same thing is like the victors write, the history, and so the corporations have just scrubbed anything that's revolutionary, any war, anything that might allude to how you might overthrow them. It's clearly not okay. But as you said, I don't think anyone is actually reading in this society, it seems like.
No, and you just have someone, I forget the terminology they use, but you have someone like recap it for you, which is obviously just like,
a corporate
notes
tutor.
Propaganda. And then
they'll send a corporate tutor to your house.
Yeah, the scientist he visits sort of indicates that like they're just kind of losing everything. That's what seems to be where they're going with it. Like they're going to lose the entirety of world history, all knowledge. There aren't books anymore. It's just stored in this computer. And then I forget what he exactly asked the computer, but it's just such like, if you were asking a supercomputer that knew all the world's knowledge, I would have some more questions for it. But he just kind of like, he's like, who makes decisions in corporations? And it's like, corporate executives make decisions.
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, does he like? It's almost like he doesn't realize that is the CEO guy's like Bartholomew. Is that his name? I can't remember now. Something
Evil
like that.
Brit. Yeah.
Yes, but he like it's like he doesn't realize like how far up things go, because like you said, he's just like this jock who's just been playing rollerball. He's just gifted at it, and he just doesn't question any or understand like the chain of command of like corporate structure, because it's just like this is just normal society to him, and he's rich.
Yeah, what I kind of pulled from that is that this movie was made in a time when people were, working in offices and being laid off, and you would just like get a notice from like a person wouldn't even tell you anymore, or you wouldn't, like an intermediary would tell you, the HR department or something, and you'd be like, who made this decision? Like, I feel like that's the resonance it had with people at the time. I mean, and still today, but
now we accept our robotic overlords, and
Yeah.
we've internalized those excuses of like, oh, the economy took a downturn, so the interest rate went up. Like, nobody's making a decision when we discuss the economy today. It's all a machine that we're just privy, that we submit to.
Yeah, he called it the world's brain, I think, right? They
Oh,
call
great.
the computer.
Yeah.
It's like the world's brain that apparently stores everything, but apparently is also very forgetful. It doesn't.
perfect combination.
It's been taking too many of those pills, I guess. It's like a little hyped up on
Tic Tacs.
Little Tic Tacs. But yeah, it is very bizarre. That's like a twist in the movie that I didn't remember from ages ago. Like that this supercomputer in Geneva, which of course it like makes sense that it's in Geneva for some reason. It makes sense, whatever they want it to be. And he doesn't get any answers, and he's just gone. And it's just he gets no answers. It's just he decides like, if I can't get information, I'm just going to kill people on the rollerball court.
That's the only choice he's got, really. He can retire and live on his horse farm by himself, or play the sport he was born to play.
Yeah, but at that point, they've like robbed everything from him. Like, they even took away the illusion of his relationship with his wife at that point.
And the woman they sent him was clearly like an operative. Like he figures out that she's like a government operative, basically, just to spy on him.
Everyone's an operative.
Yeah.
Like, his coach is very clearly like an operative when he asks him like, oh, why are they getting me to retire? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. Don't ask me about that. I don't know. I'm just here to watch you. I mean, and the only person that really cared for him in a sincere way is Moon Pie. And that's where Moon Pie getting like knocked to death in a coma is really tragic. And then he like sets up Moon Pie to basically be a vegetable forever, using his privilege card, which is it's haunting. I think about like Moon Pie a lot.
I did like the scene where he's in like the hospital there in Tokyo, and the guy is like, you got to sign these papers, and so we can pull them out. Like, he's like, somebody's got to sign for this so we can like get rid of them. And he's just like, no. And they're like, what do you mean no? Like, you're supposed to sign the papers.
Yeah, I guess that there is like this longing for real human connection and devotion. And for Jonathan, it's really like the team is the closest thing he can like create. It's his collective. It's this thing that he can put his libido into. And I guess that's so dangerous that they're willing to strip everything from him.
Well, one of the great lines I thought too was when he's in the hospital scene you're talking about, Matt, is he said, like, they're trying to make him sign the document, and they say like, oh, there are rules. And I think Jonathan says there aren't any rules. Like, I feel like he's just like come to the realization, like, that moment was the society like doesn't really even like exist in the way I thought it did. You can just do whatever you want when you have a certain status. I have that status, and I'm just gonna, fuck off. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about the movie, is that like you come to these no character is articulating this stuff. All of this is just like internalized as we go through this investigation with Jonathan. And that's what's so haunting about it, is like we've come to the same realizations as Jonathan at the end of the film. And then we're left, I guess, ourselves on the rollerball rink skating around after the film is completed. If they just could cut out the rollerball parts, this film would be great.
I would say they just should film it better.
Yeah.
Which two tries, and they basically have failed.
Both times.
I did want to read one more paragraph from the short story.
Oh yeah,
because it deals with this like concept of changing rules and how they can do whatever they want. And I think this is his trainer talking, the guy Cletus, I think. Who has a slightly different role in the book. He's a former teammate who went on to be a judge, and he has some inside information. And so they're talking about escalating the rules. And there's sort of there's always rumors about what they're going to do next, what the corporation's going to order to make it more dangerous. And he says, but the rules, I hear of games in Manila now or in Barcelona with no time limits, men bashing each other until there's no runners left, no way of scoring points. That's the coming thing. I hear of rollerball murder played with mixed teams, men and women wearing tearaway jerseys, which add a little tit and vulnerable exposure to the action. Everything will happen. They'll change the rules until we skate on a slick of blood.
Jeez.
I love it. I gotta get this short story. I gotta get that copy of Esquire.
It's got some good. That's why I copied some passages, because I thought it was it's 7 pages and it flies through the story, but it has some really, especially if you watch it with the movie, it has some good insights into what the writer is going for and some really great writing.
Yeah, I like that. The scene we briefly mentioned, but I think it's like so much happens is, well, I guess maybe one more. So they want him to do like an interview to like announce his retirement, and so they build like this whole. That's when we find out about like the guy who's into stats. Yeah. He's doing his little thing, and they're like, and they also write a script for him like he's a complete moron. Like the little script they have from him, he's like, smile. Like they have to script him smiling because he wouldn't be able to do this otherwise. I think they treat them like they're these morons, but because he was so important to the people and so good at the sport, he like lifted. It didn't matter anymore. So.
Yeah, and right before that scene is that training. Not right before, but very, very close to that scene is the training scene where he asks a guy to skate around the rink and take him out in front of all the new recruits. And he's talking while the guy's skating around the rink, like, use your eyes, look around you, what's going on. And then the guy comes up from behind and James Caan like pulls like a cool move and the guy sprawls out on the rink. And he's like, and also use your ears. And what that does too is it shows that like there's a little bit of the game that has trained him to like watch out and listen to what's going on around him. It teaches awareness, like that he survived this long because he is a little bit of aware of what's going on around him. So he's very suspicious of...
He's aware of the drugs too. He seems to be, when he gives one to his girlfriend, and everyone else seems to partake in them a lot more than him. I mean, he seems aware that, people take these things to zone out.
There's so much like subtleness. Like James Caan carries this whole film and makes it like an extraordinary affair, which is crazy because he said in an interview that he ranked it as an 8 out of 10 and that he couldn't really do anything with the character, which I find wild because
I thought he was great in it.
He's amazing in it.
Well, I think to your point about like the drugs and his awareness, it's not clear, but it seems to me like he doesn't do drugs. Like he's straight. And that's what enables him to like have that awareness and being able to succeed. Whereas everyone else is kind of just numbing themselves. Yeah. And they have that's what I think he's clear-minded and is able to like, again, like rise above.
So I think when the executive comes in the locker room in the beginning, I believe he gives one to Moon Pie.
He does. Yeah.
And Caan is sort of like, looking on the situation, and there's something going on there. And that's the start of kind of, he's observing that everybody's doing this. And you over time, you pick up that he doesn't actually seem to do these himself. I mean, obviously he doesn't. They would have shown it because everybody's doing them all the time.
Yeah. Everyone's taking these Soma Tic Tacs. Yeah. He does take it, but...
Does he?
Yeah, he does. There's a scene where Cletus is talking. It's a very funny scene where Cletus is like, I forget which corporations run which city. Chicago, that's a food city. Indianapolis? Who knows? And they pass around the drugs there with because he has a girlfriend that he kicks out of the house. And then that also, there's this missed connection girlfriend in the film where the girlfriend obviously cares about him, but he pushes her away. And then she reappears repeatedly through the film and they have like some sort of tension, but it's never able to be reconciled. And that's the last time she's in the house with him and they take a bunch of drugs together. But
Yeah,
he
that's
he
right.
doesn't take drugs as much. Like he's not Moon Pie. Moon Pie is excited. Moon Pie is best friend on the team is excited about enjoying the finer things of life.
He doesn't take them to escape. It seems like he takes them to like fit in with,
Mhm,
the other people.
mhm.
This is like what we do in high society. We take some drugs and watch our weird TV that has 3 little TVs on top of the big TV.
I'm so sad that didn't catch on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you remember though when like big screen TV, I don't know, it's like late 90s and big screen TVs took off and then there was like
Picture in
shows,
picture.
oh yeah.
yeah, football in particular, sports would have a small screen showing you other things while the big action was going on. It was supposed to be the coolest thing ever.
I basically
Yeah.
do that with my phone now, though. So I can't watch a movie anymore. I always have like something else going on. I honestly watched the Rollerball the second time in a small window on my iPad while I was doing other work. So picture in picture is back.
Yeah. I guess that's true. Well, you mentioned the girlfriend. Like she comes with him to that interview prep, which isn't clear why she
Yeah.
comes along. She just like kind of tags along because she's supposed to be there. And then is she at the party scene, which I think is one of not, if not maybe the best scene in the movie.
She
Is
is.
she there? She is there,
Yeah.
but not with him really.
I vaguely remember her being very flirtatious to
She's
even other executives and stuff.
Okay.
My thought, how I remember this. First of all, the women get a little complicated to keep track of because they're all very similar looking, white women, and they're not in the movie very long.
Women don't have agency.
Yeah,
In this movie, no.
yeah, they're certainly not the focus of the film. But that woman you're talking about, I think he ID'd her as basically he called her out as like you're working with them, and then in the party scene she's shown with someone else and she's kind of whispering to him, and I loved the party scene both for the initial setup with there's this it's like a jazzy track and like a jazzy rock track and everybody's popping pills and drinking and watching rollerball and it goes on for a while and the camera just pans around and shows all these people for a while and I was like I love this and everyone's kind of like whispering and like the executives looking around for Jonathan and everybody's very it's very conspiratorial, paranoid, and then they all go out and start
This is my favorite part.
blasting trees with a laser gun while he has this discussion with the executive, and I thought that part was brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, there's another part of the whispering that happens. At one point, I had the script open, but I can't find the line. Someone says that somebody is out, but they use a name that starts with an E. And I saw something that said that was actually his last name because they never say it. They just say Jonathan E. And I think it's like Eric or something. Evans. Did you hear about Evans? One of them like whispers. And I wondered if that's actually his last name, which they never share in the whole movie.
That's interesting. My thought with the name, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to see what you thought, which is everyone has one name. There's no last names. And the executives are Mr. last name. So executives are, Mr. Clarkson. And then people are just Jonathan and they just have names and he's the only person who has an initial that indicates a last name.
Yeah, it's like this sort of interstitial in between these two worlds. Like he could force his way into being Mr. Evans if he wanted to be.
Well,
that's
the
really
corporation, the corporation head Bartholomew, whatever his name is, he makes a point at some point. Maybe it's in the party when they like have their second conversation where it's like you need to leave, you need to retire now. I think he said something to the effect of, you don't belong like in the in like our world or something like that. I don't remember the exact language, but like you're not a capitalist or whatever their what they call their class. You know, he's this different strata, but
I think
giving
they
him the
even
initial.
call it the executive class.
Yes, that's right. They do call it the executive class. So he's not working class. He's not executive class. He's like petty bourgeoisie or something in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And having the initial kind of gives him like a little status.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could become something. I guess to me, he's a Napoleon figure. He really is. Like he could, if he applied himself to it, I think the potential of Jonathan at the end of the film is that he could remake society if he desired. I think that's the revolutionary hope of the film. Like I don't think it's a pessimistic film at the end.
No. Yeah, and then the other thing too is you mentioned that during that party scene, they're watching like lots of rollerball clips even before he does his like little like his movie he has. Like, is that all that they watch? Like the only TV they have is rollerball, and he has videos of like his ex-wife like dancing around like in a serene field or whatever.
You know, the thinnest premise in this movie, well, and there's a lot of, you know, the supercomputer, there's a lot of things, but the thinnest premise I think is the idea that rollerball is this captivating to an entire population.
Yeah.
You kind of got to just go with it for the sake of the movie, but
which is the actually I think the structural failure of the film, if I'm going to put on my filmmaking hat, is that then you have to make the rollerball sequences the most exciting and captivating things you've ever seen. Like you have to have like cameras on the rink, on a skateboard going along with the ball. You have to be, don't shoot it like sports, shoot it like it has to be shot like a great martial arts or action film. You have to understand what's going on at all times. You have to get pulled into it. You have to understand the stakes. And they really actually fail at making rollerball seem dangerous even. Like I don't believe rollerball. That's the problem.
It also seems like the rich or this like whatever this class of people are at the party, I almost get the impression that they don't actually watch like the games. They're just watching like the violence and care about the statistics. And then like the middle, like the working class people get tickets to the game and can, you know, shout and gamble outside. And that's kind of like the two groups. So, but again, I think you're right. Like if they made the rollerball more interesting, more captivating, you know, I think it would be.
I think this film is begging for a very well done remake. I really do think a perfectly remade.
It's been 20
rollerball.
years since the remake.
Without LL Cool J though.
Oh yeah, no, he's got to go. Stamos to full rewrite, complete recasting.
You know,
sign me up. I'm available to direct this film.
Also,
give me a call.
Rollerball, very low scoring game too.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
It's like
more of a hockey.
Yeah, there's no more than 2 goals, I don't think, made and in a game.
Well, they do say that Jonathan, he had like they mentioned some record of the most goals in a game was like 8 or something, and something low.
Oh
no!
You don't want the host to drop out of the.
No, well, we'll talk.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
And you're back.
You're back.
I accidentally just like clicked. My mouse was over the back button of my browser, and I just.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, but yeah, it's a low-scoring game. Not a lot of, you know. I know what I was going to say. Is you mentioned there should be a remake, and I wish Paul Verhoeven doesn't make movies anymore. But if he came back,
he does.
I think,
he does.
Does he make?
He made a
recently?
movie last year. He did one of lesbian nuns. That's really good.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm a huge Paul Verhoeven fan. Now I'm embarrassed to know.
Have you seen Elle? Elle is the absolute best. It's good. Unbelievable. Like a lighthearted rape revenge story. How can you beat that film?
But he would be the kind of person that could make this. I don't know if he'd make like an action movie anymore, but his kind of like RoboCop, Total Recall, Starship Troopers. It's like his perfect satire.
We're very influenced by that stuff. It's some of our favorite.
I'm a Verhoeven head.
Justice Warriors, our comic Justice Warriors is very much in the vein of this. So the whole like game, like deadly game show in a dystopia thing, I love
No,
Running
yeah.
Man. I was talking to my friend about this the other day about Rollerball. Well, he came over and watched it with me. We were talking about it. And then we got on, I don't know if you remember this, a video game called Smash TV from the 90s. It was an arcade game, and then it was ported over to Super Nintendo. But it was a game show, like a top view. You just run around and shoot. Guys come at you constantly, and you're on a game show. And they even do they weirdly pull in the guy from RoboCop that says, "I'd buy that for $1." It's like it's not really him, but he's like the host, and he says, "I'd buy that for $1." And yeah, they were just so anyway. That I was reminded of how many hours I played that game because it's very hard. But it's a.
I just looked it up. Like it looks, it's like the perfect time period. Like it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like trapped in time of that.
Comes out in
kind of movies
in the late 80s and is just like a game show where a bunch of people are trying to kill you and you have to kill them by the hundreds constantly.
Yeah. No, I'm a huge fan of again, like these movies, like Running Man. I'm actually doing Running Man pretty soon, but I'm just I don't get into it too much. But have you ever read the book Running Man, which is technically a Stephen King book? He wrote it under a pseudonym, though.
Right? No, I haven't.
It's like a completely different plot, like in the sense that it's very different. And I'll talk about it in the episode. But I think I would love to see that actually get remade in a closer to the book, because I think it's like a different message.
I think
he's doing it for his kids. Not his kid is sick, and that's why he does Running Man, not because he's forced to.
I think you could get Running Man remade now, because there's always an Arnold Schwarzenegger nostalgia with the 2002 Rollerball, which we should talk about, even though it's miserable. I don't think anyone's going to line up to see Rollerball. Maybe you could do prestige TV of Rollerball now.
Yeah.
An Amazon streaming affair of Rollerball.
Yeah, I agree though. I think there needs to be another Rollerball. But yeah, so you mentioned the remake. It came out in 2002, which is funny because they pretend that it's 2005. It's like, couldn't you guys go like a little into the future? It's only 3 years. And so I thought that was just off the bat is just like hilarious. And the difference in that movie, it's the corporations are this Rollerball, the new Rollerball, feels more like modern sports of like NFL, where the owners are basically just doing whatever they can to build ratings. Then that's kind of like the message of this movie. Whereas in the original, it already is captivating the people. They don't have to do anything to it. They're just yeah, and also the action scenes in the new Rollerball are terrible.
It's incomprehensible.
It's game, like first of all, the rules of the game are a bit different. There's this totally bizarre, unnecessary thing where you have to jump up and go through a tiny tunnel.
But then they don't do anything.
And then go. I mean, it's like, what on earth are you? And then you have to go around into enemy territory, around the loop, and then come back and score. And it's like, who made these rules up? This is the original was great. It's a rink. You go around and around. You try to kill each other. The way it is shot and edited is confounding because you really have no idea who's positioned where and what's going on.
It's irrelevant. It's just like wallpaper. Like they learned the wrong lessons from the original. What you really needed to do was keep basically the heart of that film, but make Rollerball more captivating, and they made Rollerball incomprehensible and threw out the satire.
It's just like a straight bad early 2000s movie.
And it's done by the guy who did Die Hard. It's by John McTiernan, which is such a tragedy because Die Hard is one of the greatest action films ever made. It's
this guy did Predator. This guy did Predator and Die Hard. I mean, this and Last Action Hero. This is one of the greatest action directors of all time. And I don't know what happened. It's also just got all of these people who are, Chris Klein, LL Cool J, Rebecca Romaine. It's like just people who were making movies in 2002.
and not just that, the person who wrote the screenplay, Larry Ferguson, he wrote The Hunt for Red October, Beverly Hills Cop, Highlander, Alien 3. Like he was writing good shit, and then he comes up with this piece of trash. It's like, what happened to all these? It leads me to believe that like someone wanted it to be like this.
The corporation. Well, you would think the corporations, although I guess they would. I assume a movie that was good and made money because this lost money. So
They spent $70 million on this movie, whereas the first one cost $5 million.
I didn't. I mean, it did have some thing to say, I guess, about sports media exploitation and all that. It obviously wasn't as deep as the original, but it didn't have a lot to say, and it just sort of resorted to a corny action movie.
But they brought in like the dumbest elements too. Like in the first one, you called it, Ben, as like the Jonathan E is kind of like this jock detective. They kind of do the same thing with his character in the second movie where he's investigating like the helmet being cut. Like they tried to like give an homage to it, but like in a really crappy way.
But in the worst way too, because in the original Rollerball, you are learning about the world through Jonathan's exploration, and you learn the same things that Jonathan does by seeing what's happening on the screen, like visual storytelling, for lack of a better term. In Rollerball 2002, they show the strap, and then a character says, the strap was cut. And then he says, who would do that? And then another
and you already
says,
know.
Go talk to the owner. And then he's like, I'll go talk to the owner.
Well,
and he talks to the owner, and then he's like, don't worry about that. And he's like, oh, I won't worry about that. He's like a puppy without a mind, just flowing free form from whatever character the writer puts in next. Like, it's miserable.
There's also nothing to find out about the world, because the world is simply the world in 2002, plus they have started the sport of rollerball, which they
there's like near Russia, which is, I think, actually one of the more interesting things. It's sort of like a disavowal of what NATO did to Russia and what the American system did to Russia, of like hollowing it out and making it an oligarch's plaything. But then it sort of points the finger at it and says like, oh, be scared of this lawless place
that's poor, and like they have no cars on the road because no one has any money, and they all work in the mines.
Yeah,
like I thought that stuff was actually, I don't think they were actually making a commentary on it, but they did accidentally, maybe.
Yeah,
they like told on themselves almost.
Well, and one of the things I thought of that they were, also maybe not intentionally prescient about, is that Russia and I think some other Eastern European or Central Asian countries do have crazed extreme fighting now. That is, if you're not aware of this, it's like extreme MMA that is really unregulated and highly dangerous. So they do phone booth fights. They do 3-on-3 dudes like fighting where everyone just gets like knocked out cold.
And I saw a no holds barred. Sorry, I saw a no holds barred. No rules fight between two guys who were seat belted into the front of a Honda Civic. And they just start wailing on each other, and there's like a club in the back seat, and they're like scrambling to get the club.
Whenever I come across that stuff, random videos on it online or something, it's like kind of an oddity to us in the West. I don't know how popular it is over there, but you have to imagine it is kind of like in the movie where they're like looking over at the Insta ratings going up, and they're like, okay, like what do we got? Like two guys strap them into the front of a Honda Civic and punch each other out until one of them just sort of gets knocked unconscious, and then we wait a few seconds, let him get in a couple other good shots, and then we sort of stop the match. And then the 16 rating goes up to 22. So what if we have the car driving while the fight's happening? So you see how it's just like, it's clearly just driven by total viewership.
And there's also this like commentary, I guess, this pre-commentary. It's funnier now, I think, with internet views, like with an algorithm, like the audience wants what the audience wants. We should give them more of that. If you like that, you'll love this. Which is pretty funny. There are like little winks and nods to corporate. I've heard it referred to as popularism instead of populism. This idea of like whatever the audience wants, we'll give it to them. And then like branding, he has to turn the label to be out. But
Yeah.
a lot of the satire and satirical elements of the film really fall flat and get swept to the side to make space for like, oh, rollerball would be great if it wasn't for the corruption of the sport.
Right.
Rather than like it's inherently evil to have a death sport that people have to compete.
Although it's not, it's not clear. I guess they probably mentioned that people have died, but it's not clear initially that it is a death sport to me. I guess obviously when you have a motorcycle on the track, people are going to get severely injured.
Yeah.
Just like a new sport that they've thought of.
Yeah, they're kind of. I guess that they're launching it, and maybe there hasn't been time enough for people to die. But I don't get the impression, from what I remember, that Jonathan signs up for this and people have like been getting killed left and right. That's something that develops.
One thing I saw that I didn't know, because I didn't know much about the remake at all. Apparently, all of like the nudity in it was cut for the theatrical. It was a PG-13 movie.
Yeah.
So the R, whatever you watched it online, was the R version. And I feel like that was like a very a poor decision. I feel like they should have just gone with the gory. I don't know.
I think they could have done a little bit better with a hard R.
Frankly, I mean, you're gonna have the scene where he walks into the gym and Rebecca Romaine, then Stamos, is working out topless,
doing lat pulls.
Then I just think if you're gonna do it, look, I'm not defending it as art, but if you're gonna do it, show us a little more than that.
Then they introduce her working out naked, which if anybody is a Seinfeld head is bad naked. Like you don't want to see a beautiful woman lifting weights naked.
You know what that scene reminded me of? It reminded me of the scene in Starship Troopers when they're like in the shower.
Yeah,
I felt like that was very much with. Yeah, exactly. I feel like in this movie they're trying to do all these things by like taking them from other movies, but it didn't work. Like this movie in the 80s, maybe works if it's a little bit more gritty in 80s, but the sheen of the early 2000s just added to the shittiness.
But once again, you got to get the rollerball sequences working, right? You have to have them followable. You have to have clear stakes and clear goals from second to second. Like you need like a virtuoso director. You need Michael Bay to make a rollerball. I would watch a Michael Bay rollerball in a heartbeat.
A Transformer rollerball crossover.
That's how the Decepticons and the Transformers have to, or the Autobots, I guess they are. How the Decepticons and the Autobots have to decide, squash their beef is through a game of Robo Rollerball.
One of the funniest things I saw, so the movie has a 3% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is
justifiable,
atrocious. Yeah. But the funniest thing was they're actually in the Wikipedia, it shows like a very snippet from Roger Ebert who reviewed this. And I think it's just funny to me to have like think of him watching this movie and being like, oh my God, I have to rate this thing. He said it was, what did he write? He said it's a incoherent mess, jumble of footage in search of plot, meaning, rhythm, and sense. And I think that's pretty much right.
Yeah.
There's just a bunch of crap happening.
Matt and I were texting about, because there is one really interesting sequence from an aesthetic point of view. It's the night vision sequence where they're driving on like a dirt road on a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. Like there's no point in trying to recount the plot of Rollerball 2002 to you.
They're trying to escape the country is basically it.
Yeah. They're running from the Russians because the Russians are bad because they paid the money and the rollerball is bad. And so they're on this motorcycle on a dirt road and it's all shot in night vision, which really close to the Iraq war, like really close to the invasion of Baghdad and Afghanistan and all the things, the war on terror. These are very interesting and evocative images, filmic images, but they don't really find something to do with them other than them to be evocative because they're part of a cinematic language.
Yeah. Well, also, apparently they reshot that scene the scene you're talking about. Apparently, they did it because it was too dark, and so they couldn't see much. And so I guess that's why they decided to throw in the night vision.
That was Matt's idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had two thoughts about this, which is I thought it was at first an odd choice because it's just so, it's kind of a slick film, and you don't expect them to do things like that for artistic reasons. And so I was like, oh, maybe they didn't have enough budget. But also where they are at, I mean, those kind of highways in Central Asian countries where I've been, and they're not well lit. It's not the highway outside of your city, and so to shoot it, there's no light around. I mean, there's a lot of movies where they shoot stuff at night and you're like, does somebody have all the lights on here? Like, how is this even possible?
Yeah.
And you just have to do it so that you can see it. I think that probably would have felt really false if they're not even able to show that street lights exist, because this is an unpaved road, by the way, out in the middle of nowhere. But the second thought I had was that at the time, it probably felt new, and this idea of like night vision goggles and night vision was coming into, I mean, it had been around before, but now in the early 2000s, you were playing first person shooters where you were like tactical black ops stuff, and you were using that a lot. Like people, like the concept of night vision would have been in a lot of young people's minds and daily life and like video games and crap like that. So I think that it was kind of recognizable at the time as like new.
Yeah. Like I feel like Rainbow Six and those kind of games were doing that kind of thing.
There's something like tactical about the aesthetic. I honestly, that's the one part of the film that I haven't totally wiped from my brain, just for convenience, because I did find it an interesting aesthetic choice. And then there's because they get chased by a Russian cargo plane, which they refer to as an off-road plane. Where they insert, because they don't visually tell the story of the plane bouncing off the ground and dumping SUVs out the back of it while they're chasing them. So they literally add like from the Acme sound effects, the WB sound effects library, a spring buoying sound effect, which I thought was something someone added to the torrent I had downloaded.
I rewound.
So out of place.
I couldn't believe they did that, and I didn't understand what was happening. I rewound it. It was like, there's a cartoon sound effect just happened.
So I also, it's funny you mentioned the sound effects. Apparently, they had to redo the entire score because, according to Wikipedia, it sounded too Arabic. And I think that actually is a product of it being released right after the Iraq War, or like right around that time.
Yeah,
because they filmed it before the Iraq War. They filmed it in 2000, and then it took 2 years to finally release it because everyone thought it sucked, and so they had to keep like fixing it. So that makes sense.
We would have been in Afghanistan already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it came out in February 2002.
Actually, close to where the movie takes place.
Yeah.
So they really screwed the pooch. They should have known that the World Trade Center was going to get hit. They should have known these things. They're in Hollywood. They're connected.
Yeah, there was intel. There, John McTiernan had the wires tapped. We have to talk about this.
Do we?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
That the director, John McTiernan, this movie basically ended his career, and he went to jail.
He went to jail?
Yes. Check this out. If you don't know this is
I don't know the rest of the story. Tell me the story.
All right. So this was a big story at the time because a big Hollywood director, like the guy who directed Die Hard, most of them don't go to jail for anything. But he was brought up on charges for hiring this exceptionally shady guy in Hollywood who has a ton of charges against him over the, for racketeering and various illegal activities.
Yeah, like a Hollywood fixer. Yeah.
Yeah. He hires him to wiretap his co-producer because he thinks that they're like changing the movie on him and stuff. He basically is like, and then the feds get on this, and then he under oath he lies and says he has nothing to do with it. So
Oh.
then when they prove it, he like goes to jail for a year or something. And he came out with a movie a year after this, and then the charges came like 2 years after that, and he's done. He's never made another movie.
Oh, poor guy. They were probably ruining the movie. And he was probably spying on them to try to fuck them over and go to the executives. He was probably defending the legitimacy of the film Rollerball.
You know,
I believe that.
Given his track record, I mean, you'd have to think this guy could make a good movie. But just imagine being like the movies that he's made. Everyone knows, everyone's seen Predator, and just being like, he has to walk around every day and think Rollerball ended my career. Like the Rollerball remake. Like I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to make the Rollerball remake. I didn't have to look at the script and decide I wanted to direct it. I didn't have to wiretap my co-producer. I could have just gone about my life and been fine and made another movie and been rich. And instead, here I am, disgraced.
I like to imagine that he did it for the love of the game, you know? That he did it to defend Rollerball.
Well, this makes me wonder, is it possible, because according to this, they reshot tons of things, they redid a whole bunch. Is it possible like the original version, like the original cut was like a, let's not say decent movie, a better movie, and they just were like, this movie actually sucks because no one likes it? And so my
imagination is the dailies come back and an executive sees them and he's like, the Rollerball should be more exciting.
He basically like
I shouldn't know what's going on at any moment. That's how exciting it should be. That's
he channels the oligarch in the actual movie, and they do test screenings and watch the numbers go up.
Yeah.
He's probably it's probably to make fun of like to shit on the people who's ruined the movie.
They're just hitting a button that says more new metal in the soundtrack.
Yeah, my God,
more Rob Zombie.
Yeah, it's that's a shame. Yeah, he also made Hunt for Red October.
I mean, these are like top level action movies.
They're great movies, and I do think that the entire premise, because I think that the original premise of doing the remake was, what if they had Rollerball, but there was no political satire? Like, I think executives saw Rollerball and thought, the Rollerball sequences are exciting. Let's get rid of the existential ennui of this main character and have him bang abroad in it. I think, there's like an executive brain and then an artist brain meeting. I think structurally, even in the idea of Rollerball, I think the film plays with those ideas. And I think 2002 goes the other way. You lose... They threw the baby out with the bathwater, I think.
Yeah. But I feel like movies at that era too, especially like in the early post 9/11 era, were not making political movies unless it was to like kill terrorists or, be, very... I've said this a bunch of times. Like, I feel like the I'm sure people have written books about it, is movies like in the aftermath of 9/11 just changed the tonally of the way that action movies were made, and like the one-liner movies. I did the last movie or episode I recorded was Patriot Games, and like there's no one-liners. Like I feel like that era was like gone, like the Arnold movies and Bruce Willis movies, and I don't know, unrelated to this exactly, but this is just like a boring, neutered, messageless movie.
It's kind of interesting though to think about it in that context. So like the 70s movies that are like the paranoid thrillers and all those dystopian movies are coming out of like the Vietnam and Watergate era, where everyone lost faith in government, decided, figured out that it was corrupt.
Like Brazil.
Like and so much. And then the filmmakers are saying something about society. The corporations are controlling our lives. Politicians are corrupt. Like all of those paranoid thrillers from the 70s are great. And then so then jump to post 9/11, a major event for, everyone who was around at the time, certainly my generation. I was 18 at the time.
Yep, same.
And then movies just become terrible.
I
mean, there's some good stuff made, but not not things that have there's good movies made, but nothing that really has anything to say about what is happening to society and the world and the wars at that time. Not on a major level.
Well, I think what you're seeing too is like these constrictions of public speech over time. Because in the 70s, before you get Reagan, right, you have this, before the neoliberal turn, you have this moment of like everyone's in on the joke, right? Like you don't have this leveling out of history. Like Jonathan E. doesn't need to go to the computer banks to know history because we know what's going on. Like we're paranoid because Carter wasn't supposed to be in on the game, but he is in on the game. Brzezinski's in there. Things are happening. What happened with JFK? That was only like a decade ago. Blah, 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 blah. And then like the culture just gets glassed by Reagan. Everything gets dumbed down. Cheap money floods in. Hollywood gets bigger and bigger and dumber, and the blockbuster becomes huge. This is how I see the change of the film in the 70s. And then with 9/11 you have another event, which this dumbification of everything. Like the films
Idiocracy.
yeah, you have this glassing of the culture again. Like you can't have any political message in your film that isn't rah rah, kill 'em boys. To the point where the only filmmaker who's making a film about the Iraq War is Michael Bay in the Transformers films. Like those are
Yeah.
the only ones that are depicting like anything near a political commentary on the invasion of Iraq.
And ironically, he's getting paid millions of dollars from the DoD to do it.
Yeah, it is really interesting how money, and this is what's beautiful about Rollerball, is that it sort of encompasses all of these things too, like that money moves in, and it's sort of the spectacle of it erases the past. Yeah. Processing this, we need a Rollerball remake. We desperately need a Rollerball
clearly
remake.
there needs to be one every 20 years to sort of capture where we're at, you know.
I mean, everything is now being remade. It shouldn't be that big of a stretch for someone to do it.
Well,
who's Jonathan E. in
to
the
continue
remake?
to continue with our theorizing here.
Oh, you know who it would be? It would be Jonathan E.
He's got to be Harry. James Caan is so hairy.
Ryan Gosling.
Honestly, he would do a great job. That would be great. Ryan Gosling.
He has like a similar look, I feel like, as James Caan. He has that, pretty, but also like can do gritty movies.
Yeah.
And just picking up on what we've been saying, now we are post-pandemic. The pandemic was this other, this big event, the biggest event since maybe 9/11 for the US. And so we don't know what the post-pandemic film response is yet. How we view this, like all the ruptures in society that have happened over the last few years with Trump and the pandemic and everybody losing their minds and conspiracy theories and stuff. So we need a rollerball that is, reacting to the world that we live in today.
I mean, you do see, like you were saying, Ben, like the different eras, like the 70s, the 80s, into the 90s, and then like the post 9/11. And you're saying, Matt, like the post COVID kind of pandemic beginning. Like you definitely do see a lot of more obvious like anti-capitalist movies, but they're definitely capturing or capitalizing on that being like a popular thing, just like I feel like in those other like in a different way. But I think you do have, like, I'm a big horror movie fan. I feel like a lot of horror movies I feel like have now come out since 2020 that have things to say about like the state of things now. Like it's a different kind of dystopian movie. It's in the horror. So I'm certainly interested to see if it does take a turn to even more. How do you depict this era in movies?
It depends on if you want to do if you want to do something really what I'm trying to say is like Triangle of Sadness and White Lotus, all these things, they're usually getting off on like, oh, look at how much we hate rich people.
Exactly.
rather than offering anything in terms of a revolutionary potential to their message of like some sort of working class unity. And I think Rollerball has that potential in it of showing this journey of a character reaching the end of his rope and opening that of being free at the end. He's been emancipated at the end of the film, while at the same time skewering the rich, skewering the corporate control of everything. And this is going to sound a little crazy, but I'm going to tie it a little bit to the sub implosion of there was like this strange unity of celebration of this sort of anti-billionaire hubris in the morbidity of that moment. So I think that the landscape is present for Rollerball. We need Rollerball murder more than we know.
Well, Ben, we'll have to
deliver.
Well, we do, because in Justice Warriors, the series is intended to be a long-running, recurring series. And I'm not trying to just pitch our wares here, but the relevant point is that we intend it to be a recurring series where in each volume we go after a different aspect of society. So we want to do elections, for instance. And Ben and I have talked a lot about, and we want to do different genres in the world. So like, for instance, like a murder mystery, like Knives Out, but in our psychotic, ultra-capitalist satire world. But one of the big ones we want to do, because we're influenced by this like dystopian game thing, is sports. What are sports like in the world of Bubble City in the uninhabited zone? And, it's kind of the perfect world in a way to make something like that, which hopefully we'll get to in like the third or fourth volume, because to do Rollerball now, it's been, you have to contend with the fact that like the crazy MMA games already exist in Russia, that we have been inundated for 15 years by watching people die on videos and watch fights and police shootings on social media as part of our just at work now. So we have to come up with something much more surreal.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of, which is already obviously done in like a book and then movie series, you think of like the Hunger Games, which is like the sport of like children killing each other. Like it's almost like I think what you're kind of, that sounds like what you're saying is like, what could you do that would almost be beyond we already see?
I have a couple ideas. I'm not going to say them on the pod because they're for development of an actual story, but I don't think it necessarily means, going more violent or more over the top, because, when you have things like, the Hunger Games, you're already putting people into compete and kill against each other. I mean,
you're at the ultimate taboo of children killing each other, true. Right?
Yeah,
I think a lot of the satire that you can point at this now is just distribution method. Like if I put on my social media trend hat, if I take off the filmmaking hat and put on this trend hat, micro sports, like incredibly niche events because that's where things are going for entertainment. Like there are micro shows where people watch the show and then you've never heard of another person who has seen the show and then it disappears after 2 seasons.
There are podcasts.
Yeah. There's podcasts about these shows and micro cliques and fandoms, micro betting on micro shows and the micro podcasts. I think there's going to be micro sports. There's going to be micro blood sports where like the rule is there's a crowbar. Yeah.
Makes sense because it's
live streamed.
It's also cheaper, like these kind of things don't have to go on. They don't have to build like a structure around it, right? I mean, and with the ability to just stream anything, you can just, like you said, it's popular for a little while and then it's gone. And then you try something or you do something else.
Yeah, it's Videodrome. We're going to get to Videodrome for real this time, though.
Man, I just want Now you've got me excited. I need to see a Rollerball remake. That's all I want. Remake 2025.
Matt and I are working on the script as we speak. We're writing a script for a sequel to Demolition Man, which actually just got greenlit. Somebody greenlit a sequel to Demolition Man, so we're late.
Seriously?
They greenlit Demolition Man 2,
Wow.
and Stallone and Bullock are in it. Which
oh my God.
Supposedly, I would be surprised.
I like
if that
that
gets
movie.
made. Oh,
I
yeah,
love Demolition
we love
Man.
it.
We love it.
I saw that in the theater as a kid, and my mom didn't want me to go because I was like 12 or something really too young to be seeing that movie. But yeah,
it's pretty tame.
Well, I mean, my mom, like, you see the preview or you read the
Yeah.
newspaper. There's no like I guess there's a trailer, but not like the same way as now.
Yeah. But Matt and I, we're gonna keep our Demolition Man 2 script just in case, and we're gonna do a Rollerball remake script.
Oh.
That's my plan.
I mean, it's like you said, I think some of the remakes, you know, like they've done remakes of RoboCop and everything, and a lot of them just don't have any real like revolutionary spirit. I think that's what's missing from a lot of these.
Mm-hmm.
Just like this one, there's 2002. There's no revolutionary spirit. It's just cut from it, and so it's just kind of bland. And so I think it's the time where you could fit it in, and it would be well received.
No, like if you, I recently watched Triangle of Sadness, and there is an appetite out there for a skewering of our current system. It's just how far will the self-preservation of that system let you go in your skewering? And I think Rollerball is subtle enough. That's why I loved it. I only watched it for the first time a couple of months ago, and it sang to me. Like it left off the screen in a way that other films from the era really don't, because it has something to say, and it's very clear about what it has to say, and it does it in an artistic way. And I just think that you need to get those fucking rollerball sequences to work. It has to be exciting. It can't be shot like shitty sports in the 70s.
Well, if you made them like shorter sequences, you wouldn't have to do because the middle one in the movie, I think it's like 20 minutes, maybe more.
It's a
of
drag.
that. It's if you have just 2-3 minutes of like a couple scenes, like them scoring and someone getting knocked over, and then you kind of go to the next game, and there's a lot more of the drama in between. I think it would be a much more fun movie.
As putting back on the filmmaker hat, what you need, you do like a quick montage of, you set up the stakes, like, oh, it's 3-3 and moon pie's down. Jonathan, we really need you now. But then you show the guy up on the boards ready to jump at him, and he knows he has to go through them because you've seen him see them. He has to go through them. That's exciting, right? And then you drag that out through the telescopic nature of film time, and you have a good stunt. There you go. That's better than anything that's in these fucking...
Yeah.
It's called Rollerball, and the Rollerball sequences suck. That's the real tragedy.
And they spent so much time on like the mechanism that shoots the rollerball out. They're like testing it, and like, why spend all the money on that then?
Well, and I kind of think that one of the problems, it's the way it's shot, but it's also that Rollerball as a game it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, that might be an obvious stupid thing to say, but it's like, I think you could design like if you're going to involve motorcycles, right? You have to like think through the gameplay, and then
you have to show me why there's a motorcycle, right? You have to show me the terror of the motorcycle. Yeah. This is the thing, is that it's really smart movie, but the filmmaking is sort of bad. Like, you need to be you need to be like, the camera has to be on a skateboard being pulled behind one of the motorcycles, and you have to be hunting with the motorcycle. You have to be hunting one of these guys on roller skates so that you see the danger of the motorcycle. You feel it. You're seeing from its point of view. You come up from behind, then you see like brutal action, and it has consequences. Like basic action filmmaking would do
Yeah.
wonders for rollerball.
You could also almost have it be two simultaneous games within the game, where you have like the multiple motorcycles doing one attempt of some kind of scoring, and then the people who are on skates are doing something else, and they have
Yeah.
to avoid each other. Like there's two different ways to score. I don't know. This is
Yeah.
Well, and the way that the strategy plays out is not clear because of the way it's shot and because of the rules of the game. So like one of the things that confused me is you don't have to stay in motion going around this rink. So you have guys who just park it in front of the goal to defend, and you have guys who kind of hang up on the edge and wait to kind of drop down on you. But I mean, if that is the case, I mean, why don't they just stop moving around? I mean, to leave that point where everyone's at and travel around the rink,
Yeah.
it takes you a
Yeah,
minute.
it doesn't make
So
any
why
sense.
wouldn't everyone just stop and wrestle over the ball like a rugby match, and then the toughest guys can get away with it and run up to their goal? You know what I mean? Like there's very little rules to the game. So
Well,
when
and they
you're-
don't set the stuff up too, right? Like
Yeah.
once again, going back to like action filmmaking 101, what you do is you have a training session early on where you have Jonathan E. explain, you want to stay
Strategy.
in motion because that gives you more power to your hits. When you're standing still, you can't move. You need to be flexible. And then that sets up a challenge that he has to overcome with his knowledge later. And like it's screenwriting 101, but they just didn't write. I feel like they tacked on the rollerball I feel like shooting rollerball is a fucking nightmare in the 70s
Yeah.
because you don't
Yeah.
have the same agility of the cameras. You don't have the same equipment that we have even in 2002. And then in 2002, when they shot this thing, they were all just gacked out of their mind on 2002 Coke.
At least
And-
2002, they had, aside from like the stupid like shoot you had to go through, they do explain like they have to go around a certain number of times.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
an announcer too. An announcer would have helped the original.
Yes.
There is
where
an
they-
announcer. He's doing a lot, but it really drops off after the first rollerball
Yes, I guess you're
sequence.
right. They don't have him in the, because
Yeah.
that would help you explain the rules. Like, oh, they have to, for us new viewers tuning in. I don't know, but I guess the idea in the original is, one thing I forgot to mention is in the final game they like have a panning around of the entire city, and no one is outside playing. Like, I don't know if you remember where they go. It's before the final game that's untimed in the original. And like
Mhm.
they're saying, like they're indicating that every human being alive is inside watching rollerball, like for this revolutionary moment of Jonathan E, which I thought was actually kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, Jonathan E. There's so much potential in rollerball. It could be a wonderful piece of art, except for the game of rollerball, which is the real like irony of the film.
It's like Jonathan E, a rollerball story. Because like you want to, he's the focus, like you said, like the entire movie unfolds because of him. And the second movie just, man, I struggled to get through the last like 45 minutes of that movie. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take this in bits.
LL Cool J checked out at the right time. I checked out basically when LL Cool J checked out.
He got a very unceremonious send off, but
They don't even give him a close up when he
I
dies.
know.
They just shoot him with a
It's awful.
telescopic lens. It's awful.
Yeah, there was nothing redeemable about that second one.
No.
That's what they had to do. They had to just pretend that doesn't exist in like the canon of rollerball and just start from scratch.
I didn't remember it existed until this week. I guess I remember it coming out and then just, not seeing it and never thinking about it again for 20 years.
I was trying to send Matt a pirate link through Twitter and it wouldn't let me, which I found slightly dystopian.
It's funny. I tried to upload a movie file to like a Google Drive, and they sent me a notification saying that it was like not allowed, and they were going to delete it, or like my account would be something. Somehow they knew that this movie was in my Google Drive that was not allowed.
Hey. All we're going to be allowed to watch in the future is
Microsports,
rollerball. Yeah, micro
Yeah.
sports.
micro rollerball.
Microball, man.
I love micro ball.
Yeah, I was trying to think of I can't think of any other main movies that like created sports other than like basketball. Like that's the only one I can think of.
There's a really great Upright Citizens Brigade sketch. This is a real head thing. Maybe to close us out. Uh, there's a made up sport from Upright Citizens Brigade, which is basically baseball, but on home plate there is a loaded 9mm gun, and when you slide in, you can get the gun to kill the other team, but you have to contend with the car, the Pontiac, which is driving around the outfield at all times.
Wow.
That's as a fan of Upright Citizens Brigade, I do not remember that one, and now I'm gonna have to go check that one out. That's a good callback. But yeah, so I know you said before at the beginning, for the moment you can't get your
It's very hard to buy our book right now.
your book, but
hopefully you
is
can
real
get it at you could get it at bookstores or comic shops if they have them in stock, and you can back order it on bookshop.org, and then if you can go to the nib.com bookstore, and we still have I think 24 copies.
Yeah, hopefully there will be a Simon and Schuster link in the show notes that we can provide.
yes,
It's very hard to use it nowadays, which sort of we're victims of our own success. Like we've been going
much
around
like Jonathan E.
Yeah, me a lot like Jonathan E. That's what I keep telling people.
Does your next issue come with like a little Tic Tac
Yeah,
container to?
that would be good.
Oh yeah, let's put that in.
Yeah, just it's like have a little cutout in the pages where like you open it up and it's like a hollowed out.
We should send drugs through the mail. Thank you, Evan.
Yes, I do not endorse this, but I also endorse this.
Yeah.
So please check out, or you can actually you can get a web version. You can do the Amazon app. It's not called Comixology anymore. It's just like a Kindle thing. You can buy it on there.
Kindle, yeah.
Yeah, and it's great. Book's great. Looks great. It's very funny. Very, very funny. There's a lot of dystopian film, book, comic references in it, while at the same time being in a entertaining action story, while at the same time being probably the most political comic book released in the past couple of years. And it's called, again, Justice Warriors. Please check it out if you can.
Yes, you definitely should. And I'll put all those notes as you stated in there so people can check it out. But
Cool.
Matt and Ben, thank you both for coming on and talking for talking about rollerball. Maybe less about the second one, but rollerball, the sport rollerball.
No, it was excellent.
It's been a joy.
Excellent. Yeah. So you can check out their comic Justice Warriors wherever you can get it. And you can listen to Left of the Projector wherever podcasts are available, which is most anywhere nowadays. And catch you next time.